Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome to the channel. We are here. We are at the beginning of the end with the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. After Katniss destroys the games and catching fire, she's now in District 13 under the leadership of President Coin as she begins to spread her wings for the fight to save Peeta while also sparking the revolution to take down the capital once and for all. Now, it has been a hot minute since I've actually seen this movie because I've only seen it since I saw it in theaters back in 2014, and I remember coming out not being the biggest fan of this movie. This was a time when movies were being split into two parts with Harry Potter and the Twilight films, and now we had Mockingjay being turned into two parts. And after rewatching it for the first time since I saw it in theaters, this isn't as bad as I actually remember it to be. I must have been probably in a bad mood when I first saw this movie because rewatching it again for the first time in almost 10 years, I actually quite enjoyed this a little bit more than I did in my first time around. Now, this is the setup to the final chapter. We have taken the games out of the equation, we have dipped the capital, and now we are focusing on the survivors of District 12 and seeing Katniss take up the leadership role as she sparks this revolution to take down the capital. And I don't know what it was about me watching it for the first time since I watched it in a long while. There are a lot of things that I really enjoyed in this movie, especially when it came down to Katniss taking that leadership role and being able to spark this revolution, trying to lead all these districts to get behind her on what she is trying to do. And that is where a lot of the compelling elements come into play because she is trying to save Peeta as well. And Peeta is being tortured by the Capitol, saying things that would probably break down Katniss emotionally. And to my shock and surprise, there was a lot more emotion in this movie than I actually thought there was, because watching it in theaters, I never got those emotions in this movie. It all felt like setup to me, and that's exactly what it feels like on a second watch, but there was a lot more emotion in this movie than I actually expected it to be. The way that Jennifer Lawrence plays Katniss in here, she is delivering a lot of emotional range, and you actually feel that. You feel what she is trying to do, and she's not really on board with this revolution at first. She has to get convinced by going down to District 12 and seeing how everything turned out because it is completely shattered and completely gone. And even when it came down to the moments towards the end where she is going back to save her sister for a second time since the first film, there were a lot more hefty emotions. And I guess I didn't feel that the first time, or I just didn't even acknowledge it the first time. Even when it came down to the conversation between her and Finnick, that is where the heartbeat of this film actually lies, because I absolutely love that interaction, and that's where I felt Finnick as a character a lot more. And you also have Julianne Moore as President Coin, basically the shepherd of this all. She is trying to push Katniss because she is the figure for everybody after what happened at the end of Catching Fire, and now she is pushing Katniss into the line of fire and being able to be that symbol of hope, being something that people can look up to in order for them to have the courage to revolt. And then you have Philip Seymour Hoffman coming back. He kind of has a bigger presence in this film than he did in Catching Fire, because in Catching Fire he was more of the game maker. He was trying to swing President Snow one way in order for him to get what he wants, and in this film you kind of see the mechanics work with his character. Plus you also have a couple of side characters that are following Katniss on her journey, trying to get videos in order for them to get it out to the capital, but they were fine for the role that they were given and the material that they were given, so they really didn't do much for me. And really the biggest issue that I have with this movie, even rewatching it a second time, you do feel like this was just the setup to get to the ending. And as somebody that complains about movies being 3 hours long, this movie did not need to be split into two parts. Mostly because I think you could have taken another hour or about 45 minutes-ish to wrap this whole story up and get us to the end quicker. Because remembering how the second one ended, I was not the biggest fan, and it just felt like it was just payoff to me. And this movie was all just set up for that ending, because even though it is a little bit better than I remember it being, it just still felt like it was just set up. You have Katniss going around giving speeches to other districts, trying to get everybody to be involved, and it just didn't work for me even on a second watch. And if you had just taken another 45 minutes to an hour to wrap this whole story up with a nice clean bow, but that is not how the business works. But those are my thoughts on Mockingjay Part 1. What are your guys' thoughts? Does it hold up for you? Or did you feel like it needed to be a longer epic? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys for my review for Mockingjay Part 2.